I call this August 20th, 2018 Board of Selectmen meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first item I have is the approval of the minutes of the July 9th, 2018 special meeting.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of July 9, 2018 special meeting.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Motion carries in the affirmative. And the approval of minutes of the July 16th, 2018 regular meeting.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of July 16, 2018 regular meeting.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. Okay, it's past the hour of 7 p.m. We have a public hearing to consider petition number 23502-796 from National Grid to install overhead primary cable on Davis Street in order to supply more consistent power to the homes in this neighborhood. Do we have a representative from National Grid? Okay, take a seat. Okay, and for the record, your name?
My name is Michael Parent. I'm a designer for National Grid out of Hopedale, Massachusetts.
Okay, thank you. And if you'd like to explain a little bit what you're going to do here?
This is part of an existing project to fix some facilities that are old and direct buried cable in this development. It looks like this was discovered as part of the project that this development is fed underground from across the street, Davis Street, into this Indian Meadow Drive, and that cable is direct buried as well. And normally when we install residences like this, we put a pole on the same side of the street and feed it either from public property or private property. And if something goes wrong, we can easily fix it there. In this case, the underground cable under the road would force us to have to dig up the road and install conduit and possibly concrete encase it under the road to get to the development. It's just not a normal practice for us now. So that's why we're here to petition for the pole and to run overhead from across the street to the development side of the road and feed it in from there.
So this would put it on the same side of the road.
Correct.
Questions from the board? This is a public hearing.
I'm sorry, I do. I'm just wondering if you have any information, or perhaps Fred, when the neighborhood project was being done earlier this summer, a lot of the residents had been in here for a hearing and had some concerns about how the work was going to proceed and how disruptive it might be. I'm just curious to know what the result of that was, if all of that work proceeded satisfactorily. And
I spoke to the project manager today briefly just to make sure I wasn't walking into, I don't know anything directly about the project other than what I was told today. Mm-hmm. And I did see that this other work, the conduit work, was petitioned for a little while back. He said it's about 50% complete. That was his words. He didn't advise me of anything, of anybody had complained to him. I do have his contact information if anybody needs to talk to him. But I think this pole would be, his pole is necessary to complete the whole piece of it, because we need to get it in, get wire to it, and then get conduit up the pole and connect it all in and transfer it over at the same time without causing much disruption.
okay.
Fred, have you had any feedback?
Excuse me, I'm Alice.
One second, and then we'll have public.
We did go out to the area around Indian Meadows several times, answering questions for various homeowners. Most of the complaints were satisfied pretty well. We did have one homeowner who was upset more with how staff handled a request from another neighbor than his property, but in general, I don't know of any problems with the work that National Grid did or their contractor.
Any other questions from the board? Leslie?
So this is related to that neighborhood project?
Yes.
Okay, so this is sort of like the end of, kind
This is
of
just another piece
tying it off,
that,
sort of.
correct. I don't know why it wasn't part of this original project. And it's easier to get permission from the town than a specific resident if we put it on someone's property, which I looked at a picture of it on Google today, and at the way they looked to put it, would have been feasible to put it on the customer's property. So the public way is the best bet. There's a sidewalk on the other side of the road. This has like a grass area, so it would be a better spot for it. It just makes it easier for us not to have to dig up the other road and then fix it again, and you know how those projects go, so.
Okay, thank you.
It's a public hearing. I'd like to open it up to the public.
Okay, the property you're talking about, is 328 Davis Street. My name is Alice Latosky, and I live at 328 Davis Street. Exactly what type of a pole are you putting on that property?
Utility pole.
How big is it gonna be? Is it one of those big round, that one? Or, and where? I mean, I just took pictures of the corner property, and I can't imagine where you're gonna put it. There's a big sign up for a traffic sign. Are you gonna be putting it in front of the traffic sign, the back of the traffic sign? Are you putting it in my shrubs? I mean, I'd like to know exactly where it's gonna be.
Usually they stake it out to show where it's going to go. I'm not sure if they did that or not in this case, or if it did, sometimes they disappear. But I'm gonna take the tack that maybe they didn't stake it yet, they're waiting for dig safe, to get this approved, and then they'll dig safe it. I don't know exactly where, it's definitely on town property. So if there's any shrubs to be dealt with, it would be on town property. So this, I don't know what the town take is specifically, I work in other towns. So it's usually X amount of feet from the center of the road to the property. So, it's definitely in that town area. Usually it's like 5, 6 feet, maybe more, 8 feet, depending. So, I don't have it specifically. I have a brief picture in my head of where those trees are on that side of the road. They're gonna try and put it in the most disruptive spot, least disruptive spot as possible. They're not gonna put it in a spot where it's gonna block people's view in traffic or block a sign. But again, I don't know specifically where it's going.
And this will be on town property.
Correct, that's why we're here.
When will they mark it?
Somebody will come out and mark it with a white stake, and they might even paint the road a little for dig safe and show where the pole's going to go. If you have concerns, I can give you a contact person, and maybe he can meet you out there, have somebody meet you out there and address your concerns if it's gonna affect you in some way.
How come they didn't put a pole on the other side of Davis Street in Indian Meadow when they just did this construction? That was all underground?
The underground, so if you're on Davis Street facing Indian Meadow, all the underground wire goes on the right-hand side of the road. So if they put it on the left-hand side of the road, they would have to cross back under the road to get to it. So they put it on the same side, and they can just run it along where the direct buried cable is now. They put conduit in the ground, and then the conduit will sweep up the pole, and they'll just run the wire in the conduit of the pole and tap into there on that side.
I would like the name of it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Gotcha.
Any other questions, comments from the public? So you will get back to,
Yes, ma'am.
all right. Hearing no other questions from the public or comments from the public, I'm going to close the public hearing. Any other comments from the board? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
I move the board vote to approve and execute petition number 235-02796 as submitted by National Grid to install overhead primary cable on Davis Street.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion's been made, motion carried in the affirmative. Okay. Okay, it's past the hour of 7:05 PM. Public hearing to consider petition number 238-70246 from National Grid to install underground primary cable at 55 Fairfoot Road. You're on again?
Yes, ma'am. So this manhole is in the public way. We just need to install some cable and connect it in there to a manhole on our property. We're doing a new solar project over there, so we just need to tap in, but it goes through the town way, so that's why we're here for the petition to get permission to do that.
Questions from the board? Leslie?
So there are no aesthetic issues here in terms of what people would see?
No.
Okay.
Anyone else? Hearing no other questions from the board, it's a public hearing. Do I hear of any questions or comments from the public? Fred?
Will you restore everything back to the way it was after you dig everything up
For this project?
for my project at
That's
328?
National Grid's and the contractor's agreement is they will restore it back to the way it was.
Okay, let's go back to the petition number that we were on, Fred.
Yes. Staff has no problem with that. We're concerned about the timing of the work and wanted to encourage National Grid to complete their contractual disagreements so that we could have that done after any picketing or exercises of right to go on.
Oh,
Avoid any
oh, really?
further.
They're picketing that site, yeah, okay.
So the police department's out there all the time, but if we
Yeah.
could avoid having more contractors out there, we
Yeah.
would prefer that.
I'm not sure how they would handle that in this case. I mean, I don't know what the urgency of this project is. They might choose to do it at another point in time where it's less of an issue, but I don't know. There's a lot of things that were affected by this lockout that are causing some issues elsewhere, so.
Lieutenant Galvin, do you have anything that you'd like to say to that?
I had spoken with Fred early, and we're in agreement where things have been going relatively smoothly there, and I don't know if you're, by putting a work crew right in the middle of the two gates, that might heat things up a little bit, so if it could be pushed off, I think that would be helpful.
Sure. I'll take that back with me.
Any other comments from the public? Hearing none, I'll close this public hearing. Any other comments from the board?
I guess I'd just like to know how strongly we feel about not having the work done until the contractual issues at National Grid have been completed and there isn't any risk of, do we want to put a condition on
Yeah.
on this, is my question.
It's a difficult thing to condition because we don't have any idea as to how long it would go on.
Right.
The recommendation that we could avoid any further conflict by not having the work done until the lockout is settled. When people show up, that's when picketers engage more actively.
Lieutenant Galvin?
I mean, they're there pretty much between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. I don't know if that's something that a night crew could get done relatively easily.
It's possible.
Do we want a condition on this?
If I may, I don't know that it would be appropriate to put a condition on this. I think expressing our concerns is enough, and I would hope that National Grid would be appropriately sensitive in the scheduling of this, and I would leave it to either Lieutenant Galvin or Chief Liver to, reach out to them to discuss their concerns. We've always been able to work very well with National Grid, and I would leave it at that.
So you'll take it back, Lieutenant Galvin?
Yeah, and whoever's gonna be doing the work, if they contact us, give us a time frame, we can come to an agreement what would be best and the safest thing.
Absolutely.
They will need a road opening permit in order to do the work, and that will go through DPW, police and fire as well, so we'll all be on the same page.
Very good.
Any other questions from the board or comments? Hearing none, do I hear a motion? Excuse me.
Did you say you would do that in the evening from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m.?
This isn't yours.
Oh,
This
not
is,
mine.
no. This is the National Grid one. Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move the board vote to approve and execute petition number 238-70246 as submitted by National Grid to install underground primary cable at 55 Barefoot Road.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay. It's past the hour of 7:10. We have a public hearing scheduled for cable television license renewal with Charter Communications. We're going to move to pass over, or we're going to pass over this tonight, because this needs to actually be rescheduled, because it's not with Charter Communication, it's with Verizon Communication, so it needs to be re-advertised for 2 weeks, and it'll come back in a September meeting. Okay? So I don't think we need a motion to pass over, just. Okay. Kimberly Foster, Assistant Town Administrator, Green Communities Program Overview and Designation Application Update.
Thank you. Excuse me. I'm pleased to be here to give you an update on where things stand with the town's Green Communities designation application. I have with me tonight, Kelly Brown is the regional coordinator, the Central Region Coordinator for the Green Communities Division, and Dominique Dutremble is from an associate planner with Central Mass Regional Planning. And both of these individuals have been very involved for actually a few years now on helping the town get to the point where we will, I anticipate we will be ready to submit an application for a Green Communities designation by the October 26th deadline. Kelly's going to spend a little time going over the program, the benefits, those types of things. We also have for you tonight a presentation on 2 of the 5 criteria, the remaining 2 criteria that the board will ultimately need to adopt. We're not going to ask you to vote on that tonight. We'll be back at your September 10th meeting. But they are an energy reduction plan and a fuel efficient vehicle policy. So those are the last 2 of the 5 criteria. The other 3 have been adopted or have been in place. I think it was about almost a year and a half ago that Kelly was here to present on the stretch code, adoption of the stretch building code. So in that time, we have been working to finish the audit that was conducted by Guardian Energy Management Services. They went through the vast majority of the town buildings, did energy audits, identified projects that should ultimately help us get to a 20%, actually, I think they identified about 30% projects that would get us to a 30% energy usage reduction if we were to implement all of the projects. The program requires that in 5 years we get to a 20% reduction, so it's nice that we seem to have enough work to do that we can get well beyond that. But Kelly's going to jump in and talk to the program specifically, what her role has been, and then what we need to do between now and submission of the application.
Great. Once again, thanks for having me. I have been here a couple times. It's great to be back here tonight with actual plans in front of you, and Paul is before you at really the last steps for the community on the process to becoming a green community. So, Green Communities Designation and Grant Program. Why a lot of communities are becoming a green community? Well, there's up to $20 million annually available to designated green communities. Where does the Green Communities funding come from? It does not come from the general funds of the state of Commonwealth. It comes from RGGI, which is a regional greenhouse gas initiative, and alternative compliance payments. In order for a community to get access to the up to $20 million in grant funding on an annual basis, you need to become a designated green community. As Kim already alluded to, there's multiple criterion that's already been met in Northborough, starting with criterion 1, which is the zoning that you guys brought to town meeting last year and passed, which I believe was Article 48 on the zoning. So that has been met. Criterion 2, which is the expedited permitting, you're already underway on that as well, and that's also been met. Criterion 3, which is definitely a lot of work. It definitely takes a lot of time between the town and I want to definitely commend Dominique over here at Central Mass Regional Planning Commission. I think there's a lot of time spent on her end putting together the plan and really figuring out how much energy is consumed in Northborough. There's no way to put a roadmap together on how you're going to save 20% without figuring out how much you're using today. Really happy to see that you guys have close to 30%, which means you have opportunity in how to get to that 20% over that 5-year period. The energy reduction plan does need to be adopted by the Board of Selectmen. That's why it's in front of you today. The fuel-efficient vehicle policy, that is also on your agenda today to look at and ask any questions about. The fuel-efficient vehicle policy, it does say all fuel-efficient vehicles. I just want to say there's mile per gallon ratings depending on the type of vehicle that's being purchased within the community. Mile per gallon ratings for sport utility vehicles, for compact cars, for pickup trucks, and so on. There's also a lot of vehicles that do not have to comply with the fuel-efficient vehicle policy, such as emergency response vehicles, vehicles that have 8,500 pounds of gross vehicle weight or above, so a lot of DPW trucks, and so on. And then the last criterion, which the communities also met, was adopting the stretch energy code, and that's the 5th criterion a community needs to become a designated green community. To date, 241 communities have adopted the stretch code, many of your neighbors. and 210 have become a designated green community. One of the biggest differences I want to say that has happened over the last year and a half is I think the last time I was here, I said since the beginning of the program, which was in 2010, we'd given out about $65 million in grant funding. Now when I say just under, I mean within few $100,000 of hitting $100 million in grant funding we've given out now to the 210 designated green communities since 2010. If Northborough becomes a designated green community, the estimated designation grant amount, which is where you start, would be roughly $145,000. Once Northborough spends those designation grant funds, if a designated green community, that's when you have eligibility for competitive grants, which are up to $250,000 on an annual basis. This last round in 2018, we announced in Winthrop in July just under $15 million in grant funds to designated green communities through the competitive grant round. Up here, you'll see a couple different communities around you. You'll see that a lot of them have, Hopkinton's been a green community since 2010, so they've gotten multiple rounds of grant funds. Southborough only since 2017, but they recently just got $250,000 to do some weatherization in their different school buildings. Marlborough and Berlin as well have received more than one grant round. I just wanted to give you a recap of the different benefits of becoming a green community, why we have 210, and then just in addition to that, I just want to talk about there are a lot of energy efficiency measures that are eligible in addition to purchasing electric vehicles that you can use the grant funds on. And then I guess we'll turn it over to any questions, or I don't know, if you guys have any questions you have on the grant program or specifically on the criterion that I can answer tonight.
Questions from the board? Now, my understanding then, we talked about response vehicles, so our fire trucks don't have to,
Nope, they're exempt.
hate to have to trade them all in.
Yep.
I guess if I may just speak to that, in a number of communities, there are a lot of staff vehicles, maybe for the health inspector, for the building inspector, for a fire marshal, for the town manager. A lot of towns have a lot of staff vehicles through sort of a policy decision by the board years ago is we don't give take-home vehicles. We've had a number of conversations about that. So because of that, we don't have a lot of vehicles. I think of our 55 vehicles, 53 of them are exempt. So it's not going to have a huge impact, but if we did add at some point a staff vehicle, it would need to be energy efficient. And of course, I think it's just good policy as long as it isn't impacting the functionality, and that's why these are exempt for public safety and DPW, that we would want to go with a more fuel efficient model if that's feasible. But one of the reasons why this isn't going to be a huge impact on us is that we just don't have a lot of general use vehicles that aren't public safety.
Leslie?
So what would be the largest vehicle that we have, or the largest truck or something that would need to be considered the next time around in terms of purchase? What would be an example of something?
I think probably what we have is an old cruiser that's being used by DPW to run errands and stuff
Okay.
with that,
Okay.
But again, under the policy, if an old cruiser that has already been purchased is moving over to another department, that would still be exempt.
Okay.
So,
I think we determined that all of the public safety vehicles are exempt because they're all used as response vehicles. And I think as John said, the only vehicle is the cruiser that's used in DPW.
Okay.
even the administrative, like the two chiefs have vehicles, but those vehicles are emergency response vehicles.
Okay. Thank you.
Jason?
I was just gonna, is there more to the presentation tonight, or?
Nope, I was,
There's, okay. I was just gonna say, based on my reading of the plan and some of the details of the audit and everything that were done, I did have a couple of questions. One was that I can't believe how much energy traffic lights use. It's just astounding to see those numbers compared to a lot of the buildings and everything. I want to thank you for the comprehensiveness of the report, the audit particularly, with all of the details about energy usage for the 9 buildings, I think it was 9, that were audited as part of this. There were a couple of buildings that were not included in the audit, and I was just curious why that was. One of them was the senior center, and the other one was the library.
Yeah, so initially, I think, so we talked about how we've been working on this for a year and a half, and at the time when I believe the list of buildings were being chosen, obviously, a lot of the schools were chosen because they're higher users.
Sure.
But I think that the town was still working with CMRPC on collecting all the utility data, and at the time, a couple of the buildings weren't on the list yet because it wasn't complete. So that's why I believe we didn't want to hold up the auditors any longer on getting to the building so that the report would be able to be digested by the town in enough time to come in for the application.
Okay.
So I think that those buildings could always be added, and they should be. The library is always a good area to look at as well as the senior center.
There's plenty of margin here to begin chipping away at it, I guess.
And they're also, exactly, so we're gonna hit our targets, but they're also, library and the senior center are two of our newer buildings.
Mhm.
Even in a newer building like Lincoln, you can still identify things that could be done.
Right, right. And a second thing, in your report, as part of the energy savings that are recoverable, some of that is based on behavioral changes on the part of staff to be more energy conscious and to take actions that would have energy saving effects. I'm just curious because it's hard to break habits, and I wonder how effective that component of it turns out to be in practice. Do you have any information about that?
So I can address that. So a couple of we wanted to make sure we included that in your energy reduction plan, just so that you're covering all of your bases and looking at all of the possible opportunities to conserve energy. We didn't count those sort of softer measures towards the 31% hard savings that were identified them. Different towns have taken different approaches to implementing those behavioral measures. Some have had great, deep success. You know, it really depends on how aggressively you want to tackle behavioral measures. But in terms of meeting the 20%, I think you're in good shape regardless of how you decide to approach behavioral savings.
So behavior issues are not part of the 30%?
Correct.
Excellent. That's all for me. Thank you.
Leslie?
Who has ownership of this chart? Do you?
I have the Excel version. I think we all have a version.
Okay, I was just curious in terms of being able to add, modify, keep up to date. How is it going to be?
Yeah, if I may, through the chair. So think of this like our capital improvement plan. You have a stake in the ground, you have a plan, and then you have to constantly revisit it based upon changing plans or opportunities that may arise. So this plan is just that, it's a plan subject to change. And so we haven't had, we do need more time to digest some of the information that's in here, and I'll use this for a shameless plug. You notice Southborough, a town smaller than us, was on here. Yeah, they have a full-time facilities person who was able to take and run with this. So not only getting to this point, really Kathy Jubert and Kim have handled most of this to get us here, working with the state and the Central Mass Regional Planning Agency, but somebody needs to drive this. And so, we've been sort of piecemealing this stuff together, time permitting, so it takes a little bit of time. To implement these things means seeking out grants, obtaining grants, and then implementing these projects. Somebody has to manage all that. So at some point, and I know the board's aware of this, we do need to be looking in the future towards adding a facilities manager with the school department, a shared position. It goes back to when Charles Gobron was superintendent. He and I went to an all-day workshop on this particular issue. But now you're starting to see that there's grant funds out there, and we need somebody to drive, to a large extent, drive these projects that, I don't want to say the position will pay for itself, but getting not just the grants, but the recurring cost savings from these energy reductions in our operating budgets. It's all something that we should be looking at. So we should, again, we're not here to talk about a facilities manager, but I just want to put that in the back of your mind that that's how this type of stuff is going to be able to be brought forward. We know out of the gate, if we achieve green community status, which we believe we will, based on all the work that's been done, We need a few formalities of approvals from the board to get the submission done by October 26th, I believe. Right away, there's a $145,000 grant waiting for us. So we need to talk about how we're going to use that, the best way to move forward with that, and then someone has to oversee these projects. So I just want the board to keep that in mind as we go through the next, budget cycle. You might hear something more about a facilities manager.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Dawn, real
Yeah.
quickly. This is gonna sound kind of silly, but you know how there are signage things in different towns for different things? Do you ever do signage, saying Northborough is a green community, that kind of thing? Because I think the awareness also gets people thinking about, as Jason alluded to, the behavioral issues. If people are aware that we're really trying to be conscientious about it, that kind of thing can go a long way as far as school kids, something at the schools, or something in town on a pole. Purple Heart communities, and you see all these different kinds of things, so do you ever do anything like that?
Yeah, I didn't actually, it's great you picked up on it. So we actually give out 4 road signs when a community gets designated. I didn't actually put it on this slide because it usually doesn't get brought up, but once a community gets designated, obviously there's the funds, and then we have designation events out in the regions, and we give out a certificate, and we actually give out road signs, and the community can put them out at the different entrances to the town, as well as we usually give a logo that you can put on your website too. So
Wonderful. I like
yes,
that.
we definitely want that. If you actually drive in, I like seeing when I go into different towns, usually I can spot them as well.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I just want to point out one other piece to coming in for the grant funds and starting off on a really good path is if you look at table 4, the big spreadsheet, pretty much 2/3 down on the first page, Kim did a great job with actually aligning a lot of your projects up with the grant funds you're expecting. So in a really good path forward, and kind of if you continued on this roadmap and you didn't want to change anything, which you can do if you want, you kind of know the types of projects that you might be looking at coming in for the next few cycles, which really makes an easy transition to go from designation to competitive. Because one of the questions I get a lot is, how quickly could we come in for competitive? It's really driven by the community. How fast the community spends that initial designation amount is how quickly they can come in for competitive. And the types of projects you pick and having identified the right kind of projects, it's what allows that smooth transition. And a path like this is definitely the right start.
Thank you. Anything else? Thank you. Thank you for all your hard work.
Thanks so much.
Thank
See
you
you
very
again in a couple weeks.
Appreciate it.
Past the hour, 7:30 PM, Fred Litchfield, Town Engineer. First to update the stormwater management plan, then a request to designate the DPW Director and the Town Engineer as authorized persons to sign stormwater program documentation required under the EPA's Small Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System General Permit.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for having us. Really, we're here to ask you for the authorization. We are working on the update of the stormwater management plan with our consultant from Ty & Bond. We are in the process of reviewing the permit that was issued to us in 2003 and updating it in accordance with the new requirements for the stormwater management plan. The next step for us, once the authorization is received, that would allow Scott and I to sign various forms that are required to be submitted throughout the term of the permit. Therefore, you wouldn't have to. There are several things along the way that we have to sign: annual reports, oil SPCC plans, spill control,
spill
prevention control, and countermeasure.
Countermeasure control.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And
SWIPs.
And SWIPs. Go ahead.
Oh, IDDEs. They've added a lot to the new MS4 permit, an MC permit.
So the process that we're working on is that the consultant and I will present the stormwater management update and the provisions that we're working on with the Conservation Commission at a public meeting on September 10th. We will be taking public comment for about a week or so after that. Then we will be revising the plan, editing it, and submitting it to you for certification to EPA prior to the October 1st deadline. So we plan to come back to visit you on September 24th in order to meet that schedule.
Do you see any problem meeting the schedule?
I do not.
Questions from the board? No.
This is,
Anything else?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
This is essentially just to expedite the paperwork process here.
It
to
is, yeah.
Sign on behalf of the town.
Right.
Submit
We
submissions.
work with the consultant and prepare all the data that goes into the annual report, and we would be just explaining it all to you and have you signing it. It's customary for staff to sign these, but the authorization needs to be on file, and the actual notice of intent that we file by October 1st does need to be certified by the board.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Hearing no questions, do I hear a motion?
Madam Chair, I move the board vote to designate the DPW director and town engineer as authorized persons to sign stormwater program documentation required under the EPA's Small Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, MS4, general permit.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, do I hear? All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, brings us to reports. Tim?
First, I got a couple comments from people in town about the new speed warning signs that have shown up on various streets throughout town. People seem to be happy to see those come up. One question I had was if a resident wanted to get one posted on their street, how would they go about making that request? Just through the website, the normal?
Lieutenant Galvin?
They go right to the town website, through the police link. You can send us an email and request a location that way, or just telephone our dispatch center and speak with the, whoever the shift supervisor is, depending on the day, and give them the information, and they'll follow it to, forward the information to Sergeant Griffin to put it on the list, and have it posted.
And these are movable. How often do they get moved?
Typically, they'll stay up in one location for about a week, week and a half. The battery life is a little less than 2 weeks on them, so we'll have to take them down, recharge them, and then put them back out.
Leslie?
A quick question, do those have cameras on them?
Those do not have cameras on
Just
them.
curious, okay.
And how many did the town get?
We have 3 of them right now.
3, okay. All right, perfect, thank you. And lastly, just thanks to the fire chief for the monthly report. Thanks for putting that together. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Leslie?
Okay, first, under my report, Dawn and I interviewed people who were interested in serving on the Board of Library Trustees and also the Cultural Council. And I would also like to note that for the Board of Library Trustees, we had 4 people interview for 1 position. So it's disappointing that we won't be able to have everyone serve, but there will be another opening in May. So anyone interested of this particular group or anyone else should feel free to keep an eye out for that. So the first motion is I move the board vote to appoint Richard Tucker to the Board of Library Trustees for a partial 2-year term.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Thank you.
I move the board vote to appoint Laura Donna Tehran Pandit to the Cultural Council for a 3-year term.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Thank you.
Also, too, I wanted to say how pleased I am about the fire trucks now being red and white.
We're getting
Yeah, yes. There was a great picture on Facebook, and this looked great, and I think people are really happy about that. People seem to like that traditional color scheme, so that was nice to see.
Thank you.
Very, very nice. I also wanted to thank both chiefs for your monthly reports. Thank you very much. And also make mention of the fact that there was a nice letter on the back of the police department report. And I won't talk about the case, but there were several members of the police department who were mentioned and being thanked. Kyle Crew, Jeremy Treffry, Brian Griffin, and Officer Buzzell. So if you could please thank them for us. I think it's nice when people take the time to make mention of it. I know this particular woman was very, very grateful for all the things that happened there, so thank you very much for that. And Scott, how's the road paving going?
It's busy.
Okay.
It's busy. We're probably 80% done with our paving this year.
80%?
Yeah, we have a little bit of work left on Allison, and a lot of driveway aprons and handwork that follows up the paving boxes. So the interruptions you see on West, schools, summer, that neighborhood, they're gonna continue with the driveway aprons, but they're close to complete.
That's wonderful. What is the cutoff date in terms of blacktop being able to be put down?
November 15th.
November, okay. So that's kind of your cutoff date for,
We try to get it all done before the school starts. It gets close sometimes, but we try.
yeah, okay, that's great. It looks great.
Not to interrupt, but actually I had a request, the people on, I guess you'd call the east side of West Street, want to know when they're getting paved.
Next, or soon?
They are getting paved this year?
No,
Or-
no, we're looking at that possibly next year,
Okay, thank you.
finishing up Crawford as well.
Okay, well, it's too bad Fred left. I had a question for him. People were running into issues buying trash bags, where there seemed to be a shortage, and then there was no, price code on some of the packaging. So, I don't know, was there an inventory issue, John, that you're aware of, or?
Kim just ran to see if she can catch Fred, but I believe there's been a change in the vendor that we're using and the process that we're using.
Oh,
So I don't have the details of that, but if Fred isn't here, we can get that. But
okay.
the method of delivery has changed. So just again, we've had to change vendor because the way that we were doing it is no longer going to be supported. So I don't know if there was a snafu with that or not.
Interesting, okay, because there was a difficulty in trying to find bags for a bit,
Yeah.
for a week period, so it seemed as if there was a change in something.
It had to do with the warehousing distribution. The vendor has changed.
Okay, okay. Thank you. And lastly, do we know when the lights will be completed at the Northborough Crossing, that second entrance?
Gentlemen, anybody know?
There's been a delay in the pole delivery, I know that.
Oh,
That's all, that's the last I heard.
okay,
There's a long lead time in metal poles, and they're waiting.
okay, so it looks like the foundation is there for that.
Foundations are in, the loops are in, the loop
Mhm.
detectors, those little rectangles above you see, those
Mhm.
are all installed.
Mhm.
Obviously, the wheelchair ramps are installed, but haven't heard an update on the poles.
Okay. I think that's an excellent project. It's about time for that. I think that's an accident waiting to happen. It's a bad spot. So I'm really glad about that. So, oh, here's Fred.
You're here to talk about trash bags.
Yeah, Fred, I just wanted to
Always happy to talk about trash and bags.
some people are complaining a little bit about the fact they couldn't find bags for a while. They had to go to 2 or 3 different places, and also, I guess there was no, what do you call that code?
Barcode.
Barcode on some of the packaging.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, we buy the bags, as you know, once a year,
Mhm.
and the manufacturer puts the barcode on the sleeve, so there's no reason why there wouldn't be one on there. I've not heard that complaint, so I'll have to check it out. If you have a resident wants to forward me their concern or show me what they have, I'm happy to check that out. As far as the availability of the bags, we have had some growing pains. We, as you know, started the program back in 2003, and we entered into a contract with a warehouse in Worcester who stored the bags for us for the entire time that we've had the program going. And then early this year, that company was bought out by WB Mason. And as you know, WB Mason is very good at selling office furniture and office supplies, not so much trash bags. So they're learning the process. We are internally evaluating whether or not there might be a better way for us to do this, the whole process of distributing the bags to the vendors. Nyman Paper, which was the company that we used for all those years, they're a very small company, very hands-on. They actually called each store once a week and said, hey, how many cases of small bags, how many cases of large bags, stickers, what do you need? And they reminded them to look at their inventory. WB Mason, that's not how they work. So they have put the onus on the stores to call them and tell them what they need, and there's some disconnect with the store managers changing shifts, and it hasn't been as efficient. We are working with them to get them here. I have delivered a couple of cases myself to a few stores in order to keep them going. But I believe it's much better, more so on track now. I wouldn't say it's perfect. I can't say
A
that for
couple
sure.
weeks ago, it was probably 3 weeks
But
ago
it, but
now.
it has been, there was an issue. I have heard from some residents. We have sold a few more bags out of the engineering department and in the town clerk's office than we had previously, but because of that reason. But we are working on that and also evaluating a different way to do it that might streamline it quite a bit more in the future.
Okay, so, there's no change in the integrity of the bag?
No, we're still buying the bags from the same place at Waste
Okay.
Zero.
Okay.
And we buy them, like I said, we buy them once a year. And the quality has, you know, varied a little bit over the years, but in general, they seem to have been good the last several years, as far as I can tell.
I really appreciate you coming back, also.
Oh, that's no
Thank you.
So Fred, you
Anything
did
else?
say that they could buy them at the town engineer's office?
They
or
can.
town
We
clerk's
do sell them
office?
out of the town hall when we're open, both the clerk's office and the engineering department.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, thank you.
Any other questions for Fred before he leaves?
Wait till he gets back downstairs. We'll send Kim
Stick
after.
around for a few
Make
minutes.
Kim run it in.
I don't mind.
That ends my report, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a few items to report on. One, on August 2nd, I attended the meeting of the Master Plan Steering Committee, which is work in progress to produce the master plan. This subject of this meeting was the vision and goals, where we had some draft information presented to us, and then the committee was providing additional feedback and continues to do that over this, of course, this week. So that work continues to proceed. The goals are very high level, and each of the goals eventually will be accompanied by much more specific recommendations for actions to take in order to execute on the master plan. There are also some informational boards that have been produced, and these will be in various public areas around the town over the next few weeks and into September. Primarily probably being shown during Applefest weekend in a couple places, so people should certainly take a look at that information, or you can go onto the town website and follow the link to the Master Plan Steering Committee's website, which provides a great deal of information, and you can kind of follow the work in progress for that. On August 1st, Department of Agricultural Resources held a hearing in Foxborough, Massachusetts concerning that agency's amendments, proposed amendments to their regulations concerning agricultural composting. The town was in attendance both through its staff, board members, and residents. It was a pretty good turnout. I want to thank Town Administrator John Coder, Assistant Town Administrator Kim Foster, Fire Chief Bill Liver, Fire Chief Dave Parenti, and Police Chief Bill Liver, Town Planner Kathy Jubert, Building Inspector and Zoning Enforcement Officer Bob Frederico, and Health Agent Casey Mellon, all who have been involved in this and who contributed to producing a very detailed critique of the amendments as they're being proposed. We provided that testimony, oral and written testimony, and then additionally we were accompanied by a number of the residents who kind of went out of their way to Foxborough to attend this hearing, also presenting both oral and written testimony, which is now submitted to the DAR. And it's in their hands as to how much attention they'll give to it and how that will factor into the further changes to the regulations. So we'll see how that proceeds. And then in related news, the town is proceeding with legal action concerning 429 Whitney Street. There was a hearing held in Superior Court in Worcester last Thursday, August 16th, again accompanied by quite a number of town staff and residents of the neighborhoods up in the Coolidge Circle area who have been affected by what can only be characterized as a tremendously obnoxious, putrid stench based on the activities that are taking place there. Town council represented the town of Northborough and presented requests for an injunction against the activities that are being conducted there and causing the nuisance and other interference with the lives of the residents there. The other party had their legal representation presenting counterarguments. The judge is basically allowing another 2-week window from that date to allow further documentation and records to be submitted in relation to this. And I guess we're waiting to see what the outcome of that will be. So we're doing what few things we can to address the situation, and certainly we're well aware from the continuing emails coming from the residents of the neighborhood how this has effectively ruined the summer, taken away the summer from them. Sorry we haven't been able to do anything to prevent that from happening. We're certainly taking whatever actions we can to try to address the issue. Can't promise any particular time frame for any relief to come about, but we continue to pursue it. That concludes my report.
Thank you. And also at both of those hearings and at the courthouse, and I was disappointed the judge didn't act that day, but there was some additional material he wanted to see. So hopefully he'll receive that and rule in favor of the town. Also expressing my disappointment in Governor Baker, who vetoed Senator Chandler's legislation on composting. It would have given the town more tools to be able to deal with the composting. So I feel that Governor Baker didn't reach out to the town, and it would have been nice if he had reached out to the town, or Karen Polito had reached out to the town, because this is an impact that not just Northborough is going to feel, it can happen in any other community. So hopefully it doesn't happen next to Governor Baker's house, because he's not going to like the smell either. Brings me to a zoning issue. At the gas station in the center of town that's supposed to be next to the town common, got a new awning, or whatever you call it, that goes over the pumps. When they got the new awning, it was based on some of the signage was going to come off of that building. Well, the signage is still all over that building. So if the zoning enforcement officer might address that, the signage is on the front of the building, all kinds of signs everywhere.
Good, we
And
can
I
have
guess-
staff take a look at that.
Okay. And that concludes my report. John?
Generally, I don't comment on active litigation, but I'll just suffice it to say that the town has had a 3-pronged attack in trying to deal with the composting issues that we've been stuck with based on state statute. I'll reiterate for the 150th time, the town of Northborough is not the permitting nor the enforcement agency when it comes to composting, which is very frustrating because we have absolutely no tools to manage the types of complaints and issues that have arisen. Fundamentally, we've done 3 things. We have attacked the lack of appropriate regulations at the Department of Agricultural Resources, DAR. Not only once, but twice. We've appeared at every hearing that they've had with very detailed comments and suggestions about how to improve it. The number 1 comment is that right now, under their current regulations, there is zero input from the local officials and local government with regard to these operations. That needs to change. The other thing that we've done is fundamentally at the root cause, as Dawn alluded to. We were able to get legislation sponsored by Senator Chandler, which made it all the way through the House and the Senate and the Conference Committee, only to be vetoed at literally the 11th hour by the governor. Very disappointing because I don't think that there was a true understanding of what that legislation was intended to do and why it was needed. Granted, in the grand scheme of things, I'm sure it wasn't the most important thing on the governor's desk, but it's unfortunate that occurred, because that would have dealt with the problem at the root cause. Fundamentally, the town's argument has not changed from the beginning of this issue, and that is that large-scale commercial composting operations are incompatible with residential zoning and should not be allowed as of right without any conditions, simply because it's taking place on a farm. And that's the testimony the board has provided to DAR at their hearing regarding their regulations. That's the testimony we provided to the legislature with regard to trying to fix this with legislation. And in part, it is the result, which is the 3rd prong alluded to by Selectman Perot, and that is the town has been left with no other choice but to file a nuisance complaint and go to court to try to obtain some relief for the residents. I wouldn't say this is the little that we've done. We have been at this full bore for months, if not years. But the culmination, the legislation, the DAR hearings in this, in the court action, is a culmination of at least the last 2 years of significant work on the part of the town officials and staff and the residents. So it's disheartening that we've been in this position. Probably the most difficult thing for us as town officials is to have a problem placed in our lap that we all unanimously agree should not exist and needs to be addressed, yet we lack the legal tools to be able to address that. But rest assured, we will continue to look at all of our options and continue to do everything that we can. I just hope that, you know, the residents appreciate what's been done and understand the position that we're in and everything that the board and my office is trying to do. So, again, I think it was encouraging. I was told when we submitted that legislation that it would never get out of the Senate, never mind the House, and it certainly would never survive conference committee. I think it shows that some of the officials at the state level have some empathy and understanding in a little bit more detail. We had more time to reach them and to explain the issue in more detail than we did at the 11th hour with the governor. So I think, I don't want to speak for the board, but I think that we will continue to pursue that root cause in the future.
Excuse me, Don, can I say something? Okay. Would it be worth the board sending the governor a letter expressing our disappointment in the event this comes up again, which it could possibly do?
On behalf of the board, the chairman, Don Rand, sent a letter to the governor urging his support of the legislation. I don't know that so much expressing our disappointment as I think when it comes to policy, public policy change, the most important thing other than the outcome is the process. To date, we and the residents, the local government and the residents have been boxed out of that process. So that's what we've been arguing for, to become part of the process so that whatever the outcome is, we've at least had a seat at the table. You know, I think we stated in one of our letters, you know, good public policy doesn't just benefit one side. You know, it needs to take the perspectives of all the stakeholders into consideration and have something that is workable for all parties. That's been absent to date. So we will continue to do what we've done, which is to educate the people who do have the authority to make the decisions and changes to provide the relief that we are seeking for our residents. And that's a process that, you know, we will begin anew in this next legislative cycle.
And I understand that, but you know, when there's a decision made, it's kind of interesting when you hear from somebody who was impacted by it, that, you know what, Northborough really is bummed about this. The little town of Northborough is affected by this last-minute decision that he made. Literally this same thing could happen again, I believe, if it's brought up again in the next session. You know, I guess I kind of like putting some feelings out there a little bit so that he remembers that his decision was important. And even though it was last minute, it affects a huge number of people in this community, and that we're very disappointed in that. He's a political figure. You know, it can't hurt, but that's just my feeling at this point. I could be outnumbered, but I feel strong about that.
We'll be back at it. And again, I want to stay on the positive side of what we're trying to accomplish here by pleading our case with facts and information, and we will continue to do that.
Okay, is that your last
I
comment?
guess that's my report.
That's your report.
Thank you.
Public comments.
You've all gotten my comments.
We do see everybody's comments, just so that, and they are being read.
Yeah.
And we all have all the sympathy in the world.
Thank you for what you're saying, what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and we've all been out there. It is
Today I saw two young kids, maybe elementary school, walking down the street like this, pulling arrows.
And I don't blame them.
My mother's 80 years old. All she wants to do is sit outside and read a book. She can't do that. So she's stuck inside.
Well, you
I'm
can't
concerned
put the
about her
windows down.
well-being.
Can't open your door.
You can't open the windows. You know, Sunday was a beautiful day. I had to leave. I walk every day after work. I had to leave and drive to the school to walk around a boring track. I mean, why don't we invite the governor or Karen Polino out to our neighborhood? Why don't we have a little event in our neighborhood? Let them experience it, or send them the data that we have. Let them see this. I mean, I know it's, you know, they hear the legislation and just, that's all words to them, but let them feel what we're feeling. You know, it's real to us.
I mean, that's the impact, is the people that have to live with that day to day. There's a kid across the street, he's a third grader. He can't go outside because he's getting nosebleeds now. So from a health standpoint, from your clothes smell like it, I mean, if you have to go outside to mow the lawn, you can't go out to the pool. I mean, when you say it's ruined the summer, there hasn't been a summer. It's been a summer of hell for anyone that's been in that. And even this morning, going out to go to work, the wind was blowing such that I could breathe this morning. But when I got to the bottom of Barefoot Road, down by National Grid, well, that's where the wind hit it. And so you could smell it down there. I know it's gone all the way to Washburn Street, and a lot of times now, especially with the heat and humidity, it'll go all the way to 290. So that 290 overpass, everybody in that area is just completely affected. And it can't just be Northborough. This is also a Berlin problem.
Berlin, yeah.
So I can't
smelled it coming,
imagine.
I smelled it coming out of Macy's.
I can't imagine, you know, again, all the impact that's gonna have. That new hotel that's going up right by the circle, you know, what's gonna happen there?
You know, and just
Yeah. but
understand that we're working as hard as we can.
And we appreciate it.
And we
We
do.
really do. And I know
I
that
think
this is,
all of us have taken rides. I mean, my husband and I make a point of taking a ride every other day at least, just to see where it smells that day. And it's constantly, there's always a day that it smells somewhere. So it's, we understand your pain, and hopefully we're just going to continue as a board and as a town to try to fight for what's right for you.
It's important.
please let us know how we can help.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
if you need anything else from, again, we've got a Facebook page, we're very accessible, but
I think
if you need anything from us to help assist in that process,
Sure.
whether it's showing up at meetings, whether it's written testimony, oral testimony, doctor's notes for people that are getting nosebleeds or have respiratory problems because they're living in close proximity to this, whatever you need, please let us know. We'll be able to furnish much information
And we will. Joan?
in support of that.
Same sentiment, but I'm really concerned about the kids that in a week and a half are gonna be out in the morning trying to get their buses. And, you know, there was just an email that just came out tonight about someone who took their child to a doctor because of the coughing and everything from that. You know, these are our leaders, and this is the citizens of tomorrow, and these kids can't even go outside and play. And now they're gonna be trying to go outside for buses, and, you know, it's gonna be, it's a putrid smell. There's nothing that you can do to get away from it. You know, I mean, if you don't have air conditioning, you smell it all the time, you really do. A question that I just have is, and this is from past things, the past years, is that when I go down on Whitney Street, and over the bridge and go to 429, I thought from the last talks that we always had is that they were gonna be responsible for the dirt that comes in and out of that facility that is supposed to be the farm. And there's a lot of dirt, now maybe because of the rain it's gone, but there was a lot of dirt that was on that part of the Whitney Street of the trucks coming out. Is it correct, am I correct in my thinking and my memory, that he was responsible for cleaning up the street?
Any contractor or operator that's tracking material from their site onto the general roadway is responsible for cleaning. So we can follow up on that. And the real issue here is the larger complaint. Everything that you said tonight is included in our nuisance complaint, which is a matter of public record. So there's nothing new here. It's just a matter of what the court's going to do with it. And we're not going to know that, as Selectman Perot said, until August 30th. So I will say that when it comes time, it is helpful for, I think, a judge to see the level of interest and the face to the complaint. So as we move forward, it was helpful on the last Thursday, and it will be helpful moving forward that people show up. And I realize your time is important, and these are daytime court hearings. But I will tell you, I know for a fact that it does make an impact, and it's hard to deny that this is just one or two neighbors who aren't happy, or it's a neighbor dispute type of thing. This is a much larger, more significant issue, and to the extent that we can do our job of conveying that to the court and the judge, that will help. So.
The last item I just wanted to add is that the bridge is now posted, I think, for 12,000 pounds, something like that. And those trucks that come over to drop their material obviously weigh more than 12,000 pounds. Is there anything that the town, in terms of police enforcement?
Yeah, that's being addressed.
It is, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
Any other public comments? Yes?
I'm with the free full-day kindergarten Northborough group. We've been working with the school committees for the past 3 years, I believe. Tomorrow night, we have experts coming in. They're a nonprofit, Strategies for Children. They have a lot of data about the different communities, why free full-day kindergarten is so important to our community, not just students coming in, but the whole school district, community, everything. So we wanted to invite you guys to come. We had contacted Diane about it, but I don't know if she had spread the word, so.
Yeah, they all received the invitation.
Okay,
Yep.
so I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Hearing none. Annual reappointment of election officers. This is an annual reappointment. Do I hear a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move the board vote to appoint those individuals who appear on the 2018-2019 election officer list for a term beginning on September 1st, 2018, and ending on August 31st, 2019, as submitted by Town Clerk Andrew Dowd.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Motion carries. Execution of state primary election warrant for September 4th, 2018.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I move the board vote to execute the state primary election warrant for September 4th, 2018.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Okay. Execution of cemetery deeds 1056, 1057, and 1058.
I move the board vote to execute cemetery deeds 1056, 1057, and 1058 as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Okay. Any other business to come before the board?
Just a need for a brief executive session regarding litigation.
Okay. That brings me to executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Subsection 3, litigation regarding Town versus Anza, due to the chair's determination that a discussion regarding this matter in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the position of the board.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I move the board vote to enter into executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Subsection 3, litigation, Town versus Anza, due to the chair's determination that a discussion regarding this matter in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the position of the board.
Do I hear a second?
Second. Second, sorry.
Tim?
Aye.
Leslie?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Aye. So we will go into executive session only to come out in open session to adjourn our meeting. Thank you.